I want to thank you all for joining us. Congratulations to the accepted students on the line and families and friends and supporters. As we've been saying throughout these sessions for the past few weeks, we so wish that we could be with you, but the video was a close substitute. We've had a number of these sessions actually, and we really want to make the time to answer any questions that you have and meet all the needs as they come up. So tonight's session will be purely Q&A. We've received a number of questions in advance and we'll do our best to get to them. We just have a few housekeeping tips that we'd like you all to keep in mind. So the first of which is that the session is being recorded. So the session will be available for future viewing. It'll be put on our website. And that means that if there are things that go really fast tonight, or perhaps if there are folks who weren't able to join us tonight, then that recording will be available for them to do so. The other thing is that we are actually all audio and video is muted for the participants tonight. Only the panelists and me will be able to talk and share video tonight. And that's really going to allow us to keep the waves clear so that we can have a clean video to share out on the website, as I said, for future viewing. So that being said, we're going to take all questions tonight via the Q&A feature. I know that some folks have already started to use the chat feature, so we're just going to ask you to switch over to that Q&A feature to get us started, or I'm sorry, to submit any questions that you have. Lastly, I'm going to introduce myself and the rest of the panelists tonight for tonight, I should say. So my name is Shamika Cameron. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission Recruitment here at Roger Williams. I'm joined by a group of very experienced higher ed professionals, both in the field and at Roger Williams. So we have Brian Williams, our Chief of Staff, John King, Vice President for Student Affairs, Tracy DaCosta, Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management, and Amy Tiberio, who's also Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management. And you'll be hearing from each of them as we go through. They'll be answering the questions as they come up, as we kind of hear questions that relate to their different areas. But before we dive into those questions, we're going to attack the thing that, or I guess the big question that's on everybody's minds, and that is, what are our plans for the fall? So with that being said, Brian Williams is going to dive in to take that one, and then I'm going to invite Vice President John King to add anything that he'd like to after Brian wraps up. So Brian, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Shamika, and to all parents and students that are with us, thanks for taking the time to be with us and to learn and talk about any of the questions that you have for making your admission decision. We know normally this is an anxious time to make a college decision, and it's really magnified with everything that's happening. So really no pressure to answer the question Shamika lifted for us to say, what are our plans for the fall? And what I want to convey is a couple things in opening remarks, and I'll try to be brief and we can go really specific for questions as long as you have questions tonight. But I'm feeling personally and on behalf of the president, we're feeling really good about our planning for the fall and the effort that we're putting into really being creative and thinking about things. All of our energy is focused right now on how and not if we're going to open in the fall. We know things are looking better. There's hope that each state is moving through phases of slowly reopening. And August and September are a while away for us to keep our planning going with hope and with optimism that we return to being a residential campus. That's our passion. That's what we do. That's why we all work at a place like Roger Williams that you can see behind Shamika and Amy's pictures right now, that it's what we do. But we also know as we reopen, different families may be anxious about how we reopen. Some students on the call and families that I've talked to over the last couple of weeks may be concerned about coming to campus right away. So I want to answer a little bit about in-person hybrid learning, online and remote options, that we are really thinking through all of those options, because this whole part of the process, it's not really about what any university is going to be doing. It's what you as a family are comfortable doing and what you want to be investing in. So I want to talk about our plans in a way that it's really giving you the choices that you're going to be comfortable within the college process. That's why in our admissions process, we extended the deadline to June 1st. I know there are a number of families that may need to take longer than that, and we have some questions that came in advance about deferring admission to January to see what's happening. All different scenarios are what you as families are facing. So let me tell you what our thinking is right now and how our thinking can help you understand the timeline we're on and the thoughtfulness that we're putting into all of this. So at a high level, a lot of our planning is falling under what we are calling reopening Roger. And Dr. John King, who's on the phone with me, is helping lead those efforts about what resuming on campus and a residential experience for our students is going to look like. And we are looking at the classroom experience, how we live, how students learn, how they'll engage outside of the classrooms in the athletic experience, how the dining halls will be designed. We are looking at all of those things, and we are moving as a university, coordinating and talking with all the other universities in the state. And we have weekly meetings with the Department of Health in the state of Rhode Island. So we are moving very thoughtfully through the plans and the timelines of reopening and learning what this is going to look like. So let me share a little of what the design plans that we are thinking about right now are looking like, and then I'll share a little bit about the timeline and some really unique ways we're approaching it that show you the character of just how amazing our faculty are and the staff that are doing all this planning. So first, academically, I think that's the most important thing. We are looking at semester designs right now that think about how we operate on campus and still having remote options for families. Our semester design teams right now are exploring our academic calendar. We are thinking about how the semester might be a late start. There are some conversations in the state right now saying maybe wait until October to open a university, and we're having those discussions. But I was in a discussion today where the CDC and federal is saying if there's a resurgence, it might happen in December. So you might want to start early and finish early. So to sit very just honestly with you, the decisions about the calendar, we're looking at the calendar in a number of different ways, and we're prepared to be communicating with you how the calendar might move. But we're also looking at breaking the semester into pieces. There are a number of models out there that we're exploring right now of maybe the semester being 3 5-week blocks or 2 8-week blocks that would allow a late start, would allow someone who wants to wait a little bit and come to join us later. It allows classes to get done and then be completed with an in-person class if we needed to send a student home or remote learning kicked in. We're looking at every nimble option possible right now. And we have academic teams of faculty across the campus and staff that are looking at these different ways we can break up the courses and the delivery of courses for our students. We have not finalized the model yet. We feel it's very early to say this is the model, but we have a whole bunch of models in the queue to be looking at which one we want to be planning and thinking about, and we'll be sharing those with you as we keep learning more and more information. We're looking at a number of remote options as well. What I would like to say at the start is that we went halfway through an in-person semester, and right at our spring break, our students went home, and then we shifted to remote learning for the rest of the spring. And we've learned a lot in that transition, and it's benefiting from identifying different changes to our hardware and technical infrastructure. It's changing professional development for our faculty. And I know from having kids in my own home that college online learning is very different than high school learning. I imagine a lot of people on the call are like, I don't want to do what I'm doing right now for my first semester of college. But I can tell you, if you've been on any of the other admission sessions with our faculty, online delivery of courses and the creativity of our faculty feels different than perhaps the high school experience you have now. But we're looking at ways to streamline and maybe teach courses in a different way this fall than we did them in the spring, and really be creative and nimble about online learning and what it looks like. But we know online learning is not cut out for everybody. So I can share, and we shared in a letter from the president earlier this week, that we're looking at different models of experiential learning and different models for students to maybe consider if they want to take a semester and not be in a traditional online learning model, or they're not ready to join a university in the fall. So I'll start with just one quick tangent, and that's that we just built a new construction management and experiential learning building on campus. And close to 6 or 7 of our construction management classes use the building of that class as an online experience. And they gained classes and helped learn about the building of a building on our campus. And we're infusing that experiential learning into opportunities for our students this fall at the current time. So for students that might want to join a university in January, we're looking at ways they can help restart their local economy and gain internship credit. And how's a way you can partner with a local organization and make a difference and earn credit and work with our faculty in an advising relationship and move an economy forward. So for some of our students that may not be comfortable returning to campus or are passionate about making a difference, those opportunities are going to exist, and we're developing those right now. We're looking at how we would price and set tuition for such models. It would definitely be something we're exploring, is that at a different pricing position than being on a residential campus. And those opportunities will be there for students to be thinking about. Those opportunities, we're also looking at ways that students can take advantage of those opportunities, but be in residence with us. I'm glad to answer more detailed questions later, but Roger Williams right now is looking at exploring opportunities with private labs in the state for how we can do testing on campus for COVID-19 and really be proactive and monitor our population and keep our population safe by thinking about testing. And also contact tracing is something we're looking at, from how, if anything happens in the fall, to keep our students safe. If a student is sick, how do we communicate with people on a residence hall floor, people in the classes that they were in? And we're building really incredible models with our public health faculty. And I just wanted to give the taste that those opportunities create internships for our students to help us keep the campus safe. So ways that our biology students can be thinking about epidemiology and helping in testing procedures and doing research on how testing works. This pandemic is a huge learning opportunity for our business students, for our public health students that can help in the policies and the things we think about. And there's so many opportunities that this residential and a gap semester and thinking about experience versus or online courses or a blending of those things are some ways we want to talk to families about what are you looking for, what types of opportunities you can have, and really creating an advising in a partnership with you that regardless of where you are, we want you to be learning this fall. We want you to be engaged with us and doing some wonderful things. So I tried to stay brief, but there's so many pieces we're working on. I can tell you timeline, we are on a very aggressive pace for a university and our work. The different models that I just alluded to, we're fleshing them all out, looking at pricing, looking at how all those things will come together. And we hope to have those plans really designed and through some of our faculty approval processes by the end of May. So by June 1st, we should have those models in place. By June 15th, we submit plans at the university that John King can talk about to the state for how we plan to reopen, the safety measures that we have in place. So the simplest thing I can tell you is by the time you get to July 1st, we'll have designed academic opportunities, priced them for you, and showing the plans that we have in place and how we're moving with the state and how the state is moving through a phased process, the partnership we have to tell you exactly what the fall opening can look like for the university, and staying with us and looking at the options that are there for you. And we want to be in dialogue with you through all of that. I'll stop there. Dr. King, do you want to build on that for me in any way?
Sure. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate those comments. I should mention that Brian himself has 2 college students home who were at private universities in other parts of the country. So he really does have a feel for what's going on. And as a former college parent myself, 2 sons, I really want to sympathize and state the obvious that for both prospective parents and students, there's a lot of ambiguity. This is not the senior year of high school that the students expected or the parents hope to be celebrating. But as we head into this new academic year and this transition, that, let's face it, this is a national issue. We're going to get through this together. there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm here in Rhode Island, and including through the governor's office, that we can and we should reopen higher education. And although it's going to mean living, learning, and engaging differently than perhaps we might have, drawn it out or been expecting, it does provide incredible opportunities to be adaptable and to continue to make progress educationally as we, as a country, make our way through navigating the virus and working towards longer-term solutions. So, how we live, how we learn, how we engage, and the whole first-year experience is of significant concern to us, and it's something that we are dedicated to having all components of the university addressing, including students. So we have continued to meet with Student Senate on a bi-monthly basis through Zoom calls, and we have students involved in making suggestions on how we can begin the semester by incorporating social distancing and health concerns. We have people coming from a variety of concerns around COVID-19. Obviously, things are beginning to get better locally and regionally, as well as nationally. We hope that that trend continues. But please be assured that we will be tireless in our efforts to prepare the best living and learning environment for our students and the best total experience that can prepare students for success.
Thanks so much for that, Brian and John. So we have a number of questions that were submitted previously, and we're going to move through those. And I'm also taking a look at the questions that we're getting through the Q&A. So we will move through. Brian started to answer this question a little bit, but I just want to make sure that it's covered in full. So Brian, what can you say about risks and family concerns about student health, and how would they be mitigated?
One second here. So I think there are a couple of questions online that tie. So I'm looking at the questions coming in and that question. So the about testing and the opportunities of needing to test on campus, and exploring those options and talking about easing those concerns a bit. So we are doing a lot of work right now to explore different options. Rhode Island as a state, for those that aren't from Rhode Island, is in one of the best positions from a testing perspective across the country right now. CVS National Headquarters is here, and their partnership with Abbott Labs and working with the state, we've been in a really strong place as a state for the testing and the clinical testing that can be done. So when families are, or a student or someone in the community is showing a symptom, going and getting tested. We're looking now at how people may carry the COVID-19 virus and test positive, but never show a physical symptom. And we as a university are looking at how we can be proactive to do testing earlier and what that might look like. I was on a call this morning with Dr. King, and he can assure we're looking at how many thermometers the university can buy for the fall, how we can check for temperatures, how we can do testing. Testing is moving so quickly from different methods that it's likely by the fall you'll see saliva testing and a lot of other science things and different testing options that might be available. And we're trying to stay on top of those with the expertise on our faculty and what we're seeing happening with the state guidance that we have. So I think that sense of family safety, Shamika, is something that is top of mind for us. And it's in the testing that we do, but also the design work that we're going to do, thinking about the classrooms, thinking about the residence halls, thinking about how students move through a campus university. We're exploring all of those things right now. And like, as we've kind of said, and I'll be mindful to not say this a lot in the call, we're exploring all those options and haven't honed in on the exact way it's going to look, but we will put the things in place and the measures in place to give families confidence that we as a community are safe, are healthy, are identifying students earlier that may have that may be an issue so that we can contain things as quickly and as safely as possible. And that's for the safety of our students, but also our faculty and staff. We, think about coaches and faculty and teachers. As we reopen a university, we are mindful of the whole community and the procedures we're going to put in place. I've said a couple times lately, we function as a small town on about 180-acre footprint. We'll have 6,000 plus faculty, staff, and students on campus in August, and safety is a top concern for that. We want to reopen safely so that we don't have to close partway through the semester. Those are the two priorities of our president right now. Open well, do it right, and put the measures in place that we can function as a community and not have to be reactive the way we and every university around the country was this past spring. I think we've learned a lot of lessons and we're putting great measures in place.
Thanks, Brian. So we're going to move on to some questions about the any kind of modified schedule that we would have. So the first is about actually our freshman service project. And this is wonderful that folks have done the research and found out that we have this. And I know that there are a number of parents too who have current students here. So the question is, will the freshman service project still be an option or the date change if the fall semester is altered?
So I can handle that question. Great question. So we have had this tradition of community connections for 15 years where the entire freshman class goes out into the community. And in light of both COVID-19, as well as a desire to be a bit more thoughtful and have deeper learning related to community service, we are going to move away from that model this year. There will be opportunities for community engagement at Roger Williams throughout the academic year. It most likely will end up being embedded in our Roger seminar for first-year students. And the opportunities for community service and local engagement will continue to increase during their career. So no, we will not have that program this year as a total immersive experience where we send 1,100 students out to community service agencies on one day. But we are not abandoning our commitment to civic engagement.
Thank you, Dr. King. Another question, if the fall semester is altered, what opportunities will be put into place for freshmen to meet other students and get involved?
Well, that's a great question. And, Brian's been clear. We are opening with a focus, planning with a focus on reopening so that we can have activities, clubs, and organizations on campus at a full experience. However, we have learned so much over the course of the last several weeks in terms of how helpful incorporating technology and reaching out virtually and creating all kinds of different opportunities for engagement and how effective that can be for our students. And we're learning along with our students. And so when Brian mentioned we're going to be prepared for everything, that includes should we have to switch tracks and go virtual, or should we, for instance, there be a national outbreak later in the semester and we have to do a hybrid format, or we have to deliver services remotely as well as learning. So we're going to be prepared for all of that. That's not our primary drive right now. Our primary drive is to get ready to welcome students back, but we're going to be fully prepared for that and offer a rich experience. In fact, we have a team of people looking at virtual delivery of all services, taking a look at the lessons learned from the past 6 weeks, working remotely with students and working with any issues that come up, including advising, tutoring, counseling, health services. And we're going to be prepared to deliver all of those services to the best degree that we can, both in person, but also remotely.
Thanks so much, John. Can you just give an example of some of the things that students can be involved with outside of sports in their studies?
Oh, sure. I mean, we have 70 clubs and organizations on campus with the unmatched opportunity for any student with an interest that we don't currently cater to, that student can be encouraged and mentored to bring that interest to Roger Williams and find like-minded students. We talked about community service. We talked about, well, there's always the opportunity to get involved with research, with faculty members, and involvement in Rhode Island is particularly intriguing.
Yeah. A little bit to blend the last two answers, I just wanted to add one thing from where I said, I think in this time since March, after our spring break, when our students have been remote, I've been called for quotes 3 times for articles that our student newspaper is still delivering. The remote press room, the work of our students, the work about a university is about the place, but it's also about the people. And the Roger Williams students community has been absolutely amazing about staying connected even when they're apart. So seeing a student newspaper still happen weekly through the past couple of weeks was great to see. And that's just one example across all the student organizations we have. They still found ways to meet. John, I think Student Senate was still regularly meeting and governing and thinking about things and working with John on the student life aspects of things. So that use of technology, if we're in person or remote or a blending of the two, our students stay engaged, just as if the campus is running, but we have students who study abroad. They stay connected with their classmates, with each other, with their faculty very, very deeply. The size of Roger Williams really lends itself to establishing those personal connections in such a great way.
Thanks so much, Brian. And the one thing that I would encourage you all to do, if you haven't already yet, is to tell your students to go out and join our virtual community through the Wiser platform that's already been created. And this is a way for students to get connected to each other. They're grouped by schools, they're grouped by some of our extracurricular clubs and activities. So there's an invite that's in all the acceptance inboxes for them to be able to connect with each other that way too, with faculty and staff at Roger Williams and current students. So that's one way that they can get started making those connections right now. So the next question that we're going to take from this area is, what are students doing now? And can you give me an example what you meant by project-based credit? So what does the online learning look like now?
So online learning, and John may have some examples he can think of. Project-based learning is really a focus we have of not just putting a student in an internship into a site, but by listening to what an organization or a community needs, and then finding the right students and the right faculty partners to make something work. So at heart, project learning is in our DNA and how we deliver classes. So project-based, great examples, and one that's really moved over the last couple of years. The town of Bristol looked for help with designing possible scenarios for extending a bike path that's in the town and connecting it to the campus somehow. And student groups and classes worked with faculty and architecture students and policy and zoning, and helped develop plans for the university that this past spring turned into funding and a grant proposal. And we're moving forward with actually building an extension of the bike path between the campus and the town as we go forward. A former tour guide in admissions and one of our Roger Williams alumni is working for the design firm that is doing those engineering projects. And it's just full circle for her to kind of pull that together. So project learning looks like that. And we look and see ways that project learning will continue this upcoming year, and students can do it remotely, and think of that just like an on-site internship for a semester. It could be 6 credits, 9 credits, and take an online class. We're really moving towards sort of a design your own semester type of opportunity for students that want to take advantage of that type of thing. But for students on campus, it can look across like an internship, but really having a project, having something you've worked on for an organization versus working 10 hours a week and doing, a different type of an experience or doing research. We're making policy recommendations, we're designing things, and that's projects. How does online learning look now? I think was the other half of what you asked. It's really different based on the class. A dance class and students doing performance for their professor on video is really different than some of our science faculty, where you're mixing chemicals in virtual test tubes, and they found some cool online software so that virtual labs are happening. that looks really different than our architecture students who are designing and doing drawings and then having them critiqued in a setting like this by all of their faculty and the students in the class, and looking at different ways to measure things. So every program, online learning is not the same for every faculty member or for every one of our disciplines. So a poetry class, a writing class, a business and economics class, they're using some different tools, they're using different software programs, and our students have some really cool access to what online learning might look like. Some of the classes meet with the professor lecturing and everybody's there and in discussion. Some professors have recorded lectures and students can get to them at a time that's more convenient for them at home. And then they get together and have discussions or a guided advising session one-on-one with a professor if they're doing research. So I think that's a place where maybe it feels and can look different than high school, and what the online experience might be for some of you in terms of what it looks like. There's going to be a lot of nimbleness, I think, in an experience of how our faculty are really creative and they think about the online method that's best to convey and help students learn the content that they're trying to share.
Thanks so much, Brian. We are going to move into a round of financial aid related decisions and questions. And the first one is the due date for the FAFSA extended to June 1st?
We actually don't have a deadline date. We have a priority consideration date of February 1st, just so we can get financial aid packages out to you. So as soon as we receive your FAFSA, we will send you a financial aid package. So there is no clear-cut deadline. It was just a priority deadline to get you a package sooner.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Next, besides the financial aid package and work study, what are other financing options?
So in addition to the financial aid that was offered on your award letter, there are different options that families have available to them. Parents can take out a Parent Plus loan, or students can borrow a private alternative loan. And then we do also work with a company called Tuition Management Services, where you can make monthly payments spread over 10 months to pay your tuition. Those are the main ways.
Another one here, I received an RWU grant on my financial aid package. Will this carry over for all 4 years? Is it EFC depending, or is it just for 1 year?
That's a great question. And here at Roger Williams University, we actually guarantee Roger Williams grant and Roger Williams aid for all 4 years. So regardless of your EFC, you will get that funding for all 4 years.
Thanks so much. Brian, did you want to add anything else to that? It's muted. I'm going to go ahead and say no. All right. Is there a different address when sending funds from a 529 college savings plan directly to the Office of Undergraduate?
Tracy.
Brian? Brian, did you want to add anything else? I think I heard you saying something, but you've cut out again.
Might want to have, yeah. I'm switching my connection if I'm okay now. No, I have something now. I'm sorry. Everything's froze.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. It looks like Brian's having some technical difficulties, but he'll rejoin us momentarily. So to ask that question again, is there a different address when sending funds from a 529 college savings plan directly to the Office of Undergraduate Admission, or is it the current mailing address?
Well, you can actually address it to the Bursaw's office. So it is the same, 1 Old Ferry Road, Roger Williams University, but I would just put attention Bursaw's office.
Okay. Next, can you please speak to the response time for the financial aid office now that everything is happening through the mail?
For the most part, we are responding to emails within the same day, but we are seeing an extensive increase in volume where we're getting 250 emails a day. So at most, it's 2 days, but for the most part, everyone's being responded to in the same day.
Thank you. 1 second here. If you don't apply the loans in your financial aid package, can they be carried over to your next year package?
That's a great question, and it depends on what type of loan you have. If you have a subsidized student loan, that is interest-free while the student's in school. So it would actually cost you nothing to do that, to actually borrow it the first year, let it sit on your account because you're not being charged interest. If you're getting an unsubsidized loan, there is interest on that loan. It's currently at 4.5%. So it depends on which type of loan you have as part of your package. You don't automatically roll it forward unless you actually borrow it. Every year, a student does have to fill out a Fafsa to get those student loans, and it actually goes up $1,000 from freshman to sophomore year, and then again for junior and senior year, it's up another $1,000.
Thanks. Many other universities are providing additional scholarships given current financial situations with COVID. Is this something RWU is considering?
One of the things that we are doing is we have added COVID-related situations to our special circumstance appeal form. So if you do have extenuating circumstances due to the COVID outbreak, you can actually fill out that form and submit it to us. And the appeals committee does meet weekly. So we try to get back to each family within a week of submitting it.
All right, thank you so much. And then we have a question here about work study. I have work study as part of my financial aid. Will there still be on-campus jobs available, and when we'll find out what kind of job I will have?
As long as we're on campus in the fall, then yes, you will be able to work on campus in the fall. What happens is once we know the decision, the different types of work study jobs are actually posted on the website, and then students actually pick the one that they're interested in and contact the supervisor, and they interview just like a real job. So that that point in time, they would meet with the supervisor. If they're hired, then they would start according to the schedule that works with them.
All right. My son isn't, we don't need to say that whole part of that. Okay. So this person committed a while ago, or this person's son committed a while ago. When can they expect their first bill?
The first bill for all the students who have already committed should be going out around May 15th. So it should be in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. And if a person received a financial aid package before COVID-19, will that person receive an updated or revised package per the current situation?
Only if they submit an appeal. And as I mentioned, the committee does review them weekly. So if there is a change in that financial aid package, they will be actually notified. They're typically contacted by the admissions counselor, and then they'll get a new financial aid package if applicable.
Is it still possible to ask for work study?
Yes, the same appeal process that we have for COVID-19, it would just be a general appeal that you're looking for work study as part of your financial aid package.
And is work study available to all students?
It is not, unfortunately. We do get a allotment from the federal government, and then the Roger Williams University itself also puts about $1 million into work study. So it is a limited budget, but if there are not work study jobs available for a student, it's not part of your financial aid package, there are other positions on campus that are non-work study. So there is an option to work on campus regardless of whether you receive work study or not.
Thanks, Tracy. When do work study opportunities get posted on the website?
Typically, they are posted in August, around August 1st, and anybody with work study, as soon as that website is available, we actually email all of those students to tell them, now the jobs are posted, you can go out and search and start contacting potential supervisors.
And if we're unable to come to campus in the fall, what happens to work study? Will that amount be then given to students as aid?
That's a great question. Right now, we have not been able to do that because we already spent the allocated federal work study funding. So it depends on each student and their financial aid situation as to whether or not we can convert it to something else.
And I think my connection is back. Yay! The other thing I would add there is that we have a number of jobs that do lend themselves to being able to be done remotely. So through this spring semester, we mentioned earlier online tutoring and other opportunities. So our students in our peer tutoring arm, we're fully working and up and operational to keep the advising and work that they do, and those are work study or student employment positions. I think we may look closer at what types of jobs and ensuring we can offer jobs in a more creative way in the fall as just sort of that contingency for what jobs lend themselves to work that students are doing with a faculty member or research-based things. There are many jobs that will lend themselves to being able to be done remotely. Being an intramural referee might be a little bit more challenging. Some different jobs may look a little different, but I think that timeline Tracy mentioned of August and looking at jobs that are sort of location proof is a great way for us to be thinking about that in the months ahead. So it's a great question for us to think how we might look at work study in the fall differently than it happened this spring. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Will financial aid change if a student changes their status from resident to non-resident?
Potentially, because financial aid is based on their expected family contribution and the cost of attendance. So to commute is actually significantly less expensive because you're not paying the actual cost of room and board. So your need for financial aid could potentially change. So that is something we'd have to look at case by case. So if someone has that very specific question, feel free to email me and I will look up your student's package and respond with it.
Thanks so much. If students get a grant for 4 years, but changes a major by the end of the sophomore year, will that student keep the original grants award for the new major?
Yes, they will. It is guaranteed for all 4 years, regardless of their major.
When is the first tuition bill due?
July 1st is when the first payment is due. And if you would like to borrow a plus loan or an alternative loan, typically you have to have that done the week before so we can actually have it reflected as pending on your account so you don't actually have to send the check for the amount due.
Thanks so much. And can somebody walk through the pricing for summer courses?
Brian?
I believe that our summer courses, and I can pull it up on the website and I can add it in the chat. I'm doing that look right now, so I don't know I don't want to misstate the price, but let me go there right now.
All right, thanks so much. So while Brian is looking that up, as he said, he is going to post that information in the chat feature. We are going to move on to some other questions and talk a little bit about housing. So the first question is that there was a comment on the Facebook site that said, due to social distancing, housing may be all singles. Please advise if this is a rumor, and if single dorming needs to occur, do you have enough housing to guarantee it for everyone?
Well, that is a rumor. That's not something that has been put out by the university. We don't have the capacity to offer all students a single or all first-year students a single. However, we are going to be continually assessing our housing situation during the summer with an effort to reduce capacity where we can. So for instance, there may be rooms that traditionally as a standard occupancy would have 3 or 4 people in them. We would look to reduce the capacity of those rooms. There are singles available for first-year students. They are mostly in Maple Hall, for instance. We obviously have singles available for students that might be bringing a compassion animal with them, provided that's approved and there's appropriate documentation for that. But at this time, we expect to be in a double room situation predominantly for first-year students.
And John, since you mentioned compassion animals, can you talk about the process that students would have to go through in order to get a compassion animal approved? I do see that we have a question here about that.
Sure. It's actually going to be easier this year for entering students and returning students than ever before, because all of the accommodations related to student accessibility services, including emotional support animals, will run through the Student Accessibility Services office. So it'll be a one-stop shop, one application with a quick turnaround time. We can assure parents and students that we embrace the concept of emotional support animals for legitimate purposes, And we're growing more accustomed as a campus to having those animals around.
Great. And as you mentioned, the Office of Student Academic Services, or the Office of Student Academic Success, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the academic supports that are available here at RWU.
Well, it's a very rich set of supports, and Brian and Tracy and Amy might want to weigh in on this, but the tutoring is incredible. And the tutoring is not just for students that are C students that want to become B students, it's for all students. In fact, high-level users of the tutoring setting often are B students who want to become A students. But a particular emphasis on writing and math, which are the two curriculum areas that cause struggle for the highest number of first-year students related to their academic success. And the tutors are trained. Over the past couple of years, we've actually totally redesigned the Center for Student Academic Success area and the library, turned it more into a learning commons where there is extensive space for both group and individual tutoring and for learning. And we have a terrific peer mentor program, which is directly tied to the Center for Student Academic Success. Every first-year student gets a peer mentor who will check in on them regularly about their student success. In addition, we have a platform called Civitas, which regularly monitors students' success, their class attendance as evidenced by faculty members' comments. And we use Civitas to reach out to students all throughout the year to nudge them about particular deadlines, particular considerations for academic progress that they should keep in mind, all of the resources that we have available, and get them to be forward thinking about their sophomore year, their junior year, internships, academic planning.
Thanks so much. Okay, so when restrictions are lifted, do you anticipate a change in housing, for example, making all rooms no more than 2 students? I think you started to answer this already, but is there anything that you'd like to add there?
Yes, we're going to monitor this on a daily basis. It's it's something that Amy and Brian and I in particular, with just constant communication with the president and the cabinet, as well as the working group for higher ed that both Brian and I are on with the state of Rhode Island. We're all over this issue. And I would say a couple of things, and this is not like publicity, but in Rhode Island, we have a unique opportunity and a distinct advantage because we can become more nimble and our institutions are more connected than in larger states. So it's easier to have a statewide response to an issue in relation to higher ed than it may be at other states. And the other advantage we have is because of the size of our institution and the fact that we're not situated in a major city with a huge population, there are some protective elements to that when it comes to COVID-19 and it comes to contacts with thousands of people.
Thanks so much. What happens to students' residence status if we are able to return to on-campus living mid-semester? So for instance, do students who applied as residents immediately get switched to that status or receive first consideration for housing if we are able to become fully residential mid-semester?
So in the event that we are not able to open residentially in the fall, everybody's residence hall assignments will be honored for a later opening, whether it be October, November, or January. Everything will be honored. We're not going to reopen the system. And I think that answers the question, I hope.
Yeah, and it sounds too like this person's wondering if things would be billed automatically as a resident if they weren't living on campus, or if they would have a choice to opt in maybe for the rest of the semester versus perhaps being, don't like to use the word forced, but instead of just it happening automatically, them rolling into that resident status. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. And I think, students from a commutable distance and admissions is really advocating to be more flexible in that regard because of COVID-19. So our policies will become more flexible because of this situation and because of the great deal of ambiguity. However, if somebody decides to commute instead of coming into residence, they can't kind of hold their spot, so to speak, and take it out of the system. So we'll obviously be able to find a spot for a student that decides to start off commuting, for instance, and we will work with students throughout the process. We want students and their parents to be comfortable with the experience they're going to have.
Okay. If you only have a small number of students return to campus in the fall due to social distancing guidelines, would certain groups like athletes or recruited athletes get preference to live on campus due to training?
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was going to answer it in a non-athlete way. I think social distancing requirements are going to more so be something in the conversations we've had with the state, be how students move through the campus, not limiting the total numbers of students that we would bring back. So I think, truly that's one place where this is a little bit of an on-off switch of we'll either be opened as a residential community with conditions or not, and maybe have a delayed start or think about something in a different way. I can't imagine us having a process personally where we say only X numbers of students can return, but we have hundreds more students willing to return and making a challenge in that. So I respect that question, but I think, we're looking at measures in place where the reality of thinking about students in a pod, the students who live on a floor together, being safe together, making sure that their practices on the residence hall aren't sharing or spreading any sickness, which students living in close quarters might do. But we're looking at all the measures and in close dialogue with the state that the reality that we wouldn't want to or have the facilities to have every student have a single, that would shrink and make those choices that question is asking to say, we're only going to bring back this group of students and everybody else needs to wait. I would have a hard time even thinking about that type of prioritizing. And that's one thing that's not in our thinking that we've even thought about so far.
Thanks, Brian. Are freshmen allowed to have a vehicle on campus currently, and will they be able to pending a return to campus in the fall in any of the scenarios that we're considering?
Well, first-year students are not able to have a vehicle on campus. A couple of reasons for that. We really want them to stay on campus and to be engaged in campus life. And the second reason, honestly, is we simply do not have the plethora of parking spots available to make that option available. Now, if a student has a legitimate health reason where they need a vehicle, that's obviously somewhere where an exception can be considered. And depending on our overall mix of enrollment, we might reconsider our process down the line, but right now we're heading into the semester with that policy still intact.
Thank you. What kind of security does RWU provide for its students?
We have a 24/7, 3-shift public safety force. These officers are not able to make arrests. However, they are able to detain people. They work very closely with the town of Bristol police force. And we have an excellent relationship with the town of Bristol. Extremely low number of problems or issues or incidents on our campus. One of the areas that students consistently rate us the strongest in is their feeling of safety and the ability to walk the campus at any time, nights or weekends. Obviously, we encourage students to practice responsible decision-making and to be in the company of others, particularly late at night. We have a shuttle system which supports campus safety, which provides rides both on campus and also to some off-campus destinations. And we have an EMT, an emergency medical technician, on every shift.
All right. Just a question or two here about orientation. Will there be dates beyond the June orientation dates since everything will be online anyway?
Well, that's a great question. And right now, as much as possible, and Amy Tiberio is working with us on this, as much as possible, we'd like the June remote orientations to mirror the dates of the June orientations, the June in-person orientations that we originally envisioned. However, I think your question leads to an opportunity, and that opportunity is, if somebody can't make one of those sessions, yes, we can recreate that experience for them and have access to all of the same programs. And we're going to be recording all of our sessions. I think one of the critical elements will be the faculty advising along with course selection. And that is going to be done in a very more individualized manner anyway. So there is a lot of flexibility related to having the remote orientation.
Thank you. A question about our tech requirements. Is there a particular brand of laptop that works best with programs at RWU, or will any brand do? So HP versus Apple or anything else?
Everything works. Everything works. It's with me, it's more about the user than the machine.
And
I don't take that personally.
I can share out. There's a website or webpage on our website that gives recommendations for specifications for different machines. Depending on the major and the program that you're going into, it's really helpful just because some of our majors require, running different programs and such. So I can put that in the link to that in the chat for everyone.
Thanks so much, Amy. So we have a number of questions that have also come in about enrollment and the deferring process. So to begin with, Brian, you can start us off. Approximately how many students have committed to Roger Williams at this point, and how many are you anticipating there to be in the incoming freshman class?
So our goal every year is a freshman class that's about 1120 to 1140 freshmen, and that's what we're striving towards right now. I'll generally answer the question that we know our enrollment deadline is not what matters. It's the decision date that every family on this call is comfortable depositing and making a choice. For some people, that choice has already been made. For some people, they'll decide by tomorrow. For some people, they need the weekend. We extended our deadline to June 1st, and we know a good percentage of our applicant pool has wanted to wait until June 1st. And we hear from some families that want to have that full detail of what the fall looks like before they make a decision. We are fully recognizing that decision behavior is going to happen for us and every college across the country. I think as each state is going to move differently in the months ahead, Rhode Island may move differently, and universities may open in a different way than other countries, other cities and colleges that are affected in different states. So every university may have different conditions on how they open or timelines how they open. And we know that not any school in the country can tell you definitively today what that looks like. So it's a long answer that we are striving for the freshman class of the size that we are working on. And we want to keep presenting these options to families to be confident in a decision to be with us, and that we'll have these scenarios in place. And some people need those scenarios to be confident. I talked to one family yesterday where the parent had been, on a temporary furlough for their job, and they need to wait to be comfortable financially as a family before they're going to deposit. And hopefully as the economy reopens, they're okay and they're confident in their resources. They should be talking with our financial aid team. So every family is going to move differently right now. And we're a little down in terms of where we would have been deposits last year, but we did not have a pandemic in the admission cycle last year. But I think that combined sense of giving students to June 1, we're about where we would want to be a month before our admissions deadline. And we know a number of families we're deeply engaged with for now through the process. Amy might be able to answer, we sent a survey that a number of your students or other applicants applied to or responded to recently, where we know about half of our applicant pool was trying to decide by the traditional May 1st deadline, but then a good percentage of our students were taking advantage of the June 1 extension that we built. So I don't know if Amy would add any more. She's a little closer to it than I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've just been trying to be as flexible as possible and really listen to what students and families need from us, and extending the deposit deadline out was a way for us to give a little bit more time. But we've had a number of students that have let us know that they're planning to enroll and they'll be making their monetary deposit closer to the deadline of June 1st. So that's always an option as well. If you go into your student portal account and you can fill out the enrollment reservation form, that lets us know that you're going to be joining us, and then we get that deposit a little bit later on if that's if not in a place to do that right at this moment. But letting us know that you're planning to join us just allows us to share some of the new student information with you a little bit earlier.
Thanks so much, Amy. We'll dive into a number of questions about the deferral process specifically now. Please explain the deferral process and any other delayed enrollment options.
I can speak to that. So in terms of deferring enrollment, we've had a number of questions about this, and I think families that are really interested in what those options can look like. Ideally, we're putting into place all of these different options for what the fall could look like in sort of a non-traditional way than moving on to campus, so that if you do want to defer your enrollment, that there are opportunities to do that with us and take advantage of some incredible opportunities to keep learning and getting experience in a guided way with our Roger Williams faculty. So we would want to work with each individual student to understand, what your concerns are, what your goals are, and to put into place a plan that would allow you, if you are thinking about delaying enrollment, to do that in such a way that's going to allow you to still be on track to graduate and to enter into your major successfully. What we typically do in terms of deferring enrollment for a semester or for a year is once you've committed to Roger Williams, then you let us know whether you're going to be starting a semester later or a year later. And then we work with you to sort of set up a plan of what that time off will consist of. We are going to be a little bit more flexible this year, just knowing that students will want to do coursework and may want to take advantage of that opportunity, but it will really be guided on an individual basis. And there will be opportunities for you to do that coursework through Roger Williams as well, so that you're not losing momentum. So just get in touch with the admission office and we can walk you through that process. And that decision can get made really any time between now and the start of the fall semester. So it's not a decision that you feel like that you should feel rushed to make right now. You can join us, and then you have plenty of time to wait and see how things evolve and see what the fall semester is going to look like before you have to make that decision of what you want to do individually.
And if a family makes an initial payment to that initial July 1st tuition payment, what happens to that money if the family then decides, or if the student then decides to defer a semester for a year?
They would actually get the funding refunded to them.
Okay.
We would hold your deposits, but the rest would be refunded.
Thank you. Can students choose to delay enrollment until in-person classes resume rather than committing to a standard 1 semester or 1 year option?
Yeah,
I think this question kind of assumes that we may resume the classes maybe midway through the semester.
Yeah, I think so the model that Brian had discussed initially of potentially breaking the semester into, a smaller number of courses that's taken for a smaller amount of time would really allow for that option to work. So a student could start when, if it's split into half, they could potentially start halfway through. So it's, some of it is going to depend upon what those models look like and what we have in place for the fall. And, we can guide each student through to better understand, what their needs are and how they want to start, and then what their best options would be in that respect.
Thanks, Amy. Can you please talk through what a January start date would look like for an incoming freshman who decided to defer until then?
Well, sure. I mean, from the student life and the academic onboarding perspective, we always have January starts. As Amy and Shamika and Tracy know, we always have new students coming into the system for second semester. We have deferred students coming in. We have transfer students coming in. So we have an orientation program for them. They have an advanced arrival date. And we work with them just like we would work with students that were starting in August.
Thanks so much, John. This question really relates to the international student experience and deferring. So what happens if an international student decides to start online in September, but then finds out that he's unable to actually commit to schooling and needs to put it off till the next year? So what happens if somebody starts, gets maybe through a little bit through it, but then realizes, it's not going to work out and they have to push it off to the next year. And then the added thing there being that this person would be international, or an international student, I should say.
So there's a couple of elements to this. One is that currently an international student, whether they're new or returning, needs to arrive in our country an extra 14 days before and go through a quarantine process. And that's, as we sit today, we don't know what will be in place in August or September. So we have to factor that into the situation. I'm gonna just push the question to Amy Tiberio related to, that deferral process, but obviously we work with students to meet their needs. So there's always an option for a student to take a leave and to withdraw. The sooner a student does that, however, the better it is in terms of financial refunds. So you can't make that decision like halfway through the semester. It's a decision that needs to be made early, and one that Academic Advising and the Centers for Student Academic Success and our Student and Family Assistance Office can work with students on.
Thanks. Amy, did you want to add anything, or?
Yeah, I can just clarify that enrollment deferral decision will be made prior to beginning your courses in the fall semester. So it's prior to sort of officially matriculating as a Roger Williams student.
Thank you. If the school year begins, actually, that answers that question. So on to the next one. Can current RWU stage students take a year off if there's no on-campus learning? So we've got a number of folks here who have current RWU students and accepted students, and they're wondering if they can kind of make one decision for both of them, and maybe that would be deferring for a year or taking a year off.
I mean, the short answer is yes. A student can always take a semester or a year-long leave and then pick up their academic program when they return, when they choose to return to school. And that could be for a variety of issues.
Thank you.
If I can just add, I would just caution, if you do have student loans, please know that you only get a 6-month deferment. So you could kick into repayment if you do take a year off.
Thanks for that, Tracy. Brian, we've got one here on the gap year. So realizing that an advisor guided gap year is different for each individual, could you elaborate further by giving a few examples of how this could work for students considering this?
Sure. A structured gap year or an experience is for students that are not looking to take online classes and like learn in a classroom setting. It takes what's called prior learning or competency-based learning and takes the experiences that they have and try to map that to award college credit. An easy example of that, or two, is really anyone who goes into the military and goes through basic training. There's a federal process that maps the training that you go through in the military to college credit. The same thing happens with the police academy. Anyone that goes through the police academy and then is looking at Roger Williams for an associate's or bachelor's degree, there's a mapping of how credit can be conferred because you're learning leadership skills. You are, if you're deployed to a foreign country and you've taken language courses in basic training, we're awarding college language credit. So for us, a structured gap semester is if someone is choosing to work versus going to school, or learning skills, or in sort of a leadership position in an office setting, our advising team, our university college staff has done this for years, is looking at that learning and assessing the learning that they've had in those settings, and students demonstrate the learning that they've had. And then we find a way to map that to some of our Roger Williams courses and award credit. So a gap semester is not course-based, but it's experience-based. And it's a little bit lighter of an advising relationship than saying, I'm working for this organization for 20 hours a week, I'm working on a research project. But it would be something outside of that experiential learning experience, and is more competency based. And sometimes that competency is then demonstrated through, there's not AP credit or SAT 2s and stuff, but there are CLEP exams and different exam things that our advising team can guide you through to talk to you about how to structure a gap semester. So the short answer is we want to talk to students about what they might be intending to do this fall. If a student says, I'm thinking of taking the fall off, how can I stay connected to Roger Williams somehow? Let's have that conversation. There are many people at Roger Williams that can guide you through designing an experience, keeping your learning going, being connected to the university in a way that you're comfortable. And for some, that could be a gap semester. It could be working 20 hours a week and taking 2 online classes and kind of easing into starting in January, or it could be just diving right in, which we know a good amount of our students are going to do and are anxious to do, and we're anxious for them to be with us and do that also. So I hope that helps.
Thanks so much, Brian. So another question here. If the student takes online courses upon deferring, would the credits be accepted upon the student's return to the university?
So I'm assuming that this means that they're taking those credits
Elsewhere.
outside of
Yep.
Roger Williams. So most likely, yes. Again, we would want to have a conversation with each individual student to better understand what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and if taking courses elsewhere makes sense for whatever reason, we would want to be able to guide you in such a way that you're taking things that are going to transfer back over and keep you on target. So that's really an opportunity for individual advising, and then for us to work with students to make sure that they're taking courses that will, come back and reapply to the Roger Williams degree program.
Will students be assigned an advisor to select classes during the June 15th and 16th orientation?
That's a terrific question, and there's a parallel question in the question track that I can answer at the same time, and that is, given when we are going to be rolling out any new offerings and any new tracks that Brian has referenced, does it make sense to have that course selection during that mid-June period? And we will closely map when it is we do the course selection and the advising with where we are in the decision-making process. We're obviously not going to ask students to make decisions before they have the fullest information and all of the options in front of them. So it could be, and very likely will be, that the advising and the course selection piece will come as a complement to remote orientation and a few weeks after that.
Thanks so much. Is it easy to change your major at Roger Williams? And this is a question that's completely outside of the COVID-19 realm.
So I'll take a first to replying that it's relatively easy to change majors at the university, and with just a handful of exceptions. Some of our programs may be portfolio based. Some majors are sequential in nature. So if some of our programs have sort of 3 years of courses, you get through your freshman year and then you need to take this in the fall of sophomore year, and it's a sequence, it may be hard to switch into some majors late and do that. So there's a little bit of based on what major the student is asking about or parent is asking that question, there's some variation to that, but our students move between schools here very nimbly. Many of our students have a major and a minor or 2 majors by the time they graduate, and we want our students to be cross schools in their learning. So we're not very rigid where you're only in the School of Business and only taking business classes for 4 years. Movement between schools and what someone starts with as a major becoming a minor and discovering another major in their time here because they really love a certain subject or get really excited about something once they're in a college setting. We see that movement and blended learning all the time. It's something that's really easy to do here with a handful of exceptions of, GPA or courses you need to take in advance to get onto a sequence in a different school that may be very structured.
How many freshmen are in the honors program and who can be contacted about that? I will actually type the contact information into the chat, but can somebody talk about the number of students in the honors program and how students are selected for that?
Sure, we welcome about 60 students into the honors program every year, and the majority of those students have applied to be part of the honors program through the admission process and are admitted at that point. But there are opportunities for students to apply to be part of the program after their first semester or their first year at Roger Williams, and there are some students that do enter into the program at that point.
Thank you. Are we in contact with other Rhode Island colleges, and will there be any collective agreements about how to proceed in the fall?
Daily and weekly. The academic vice presidents, the admissions folks, John King and the student life teams, the presidents of the universities are talking to each other regularly. And I mentioned quickly at the beginning, but John King and I are on a team with 1 or 2 people from every Rhode Island university with staff from the governor's office and from the Rhode Island Department of Health. So we are talking very regularly about which things are unique to a given school and how we make decisions that are unique to our school, unique to the courses we offer, unique to our residence hall design. But we are looking at places where we can make decisions as a sector in the economy. So we will have conversations in the weeks ahead that focus on dining, and we'll talk about, can we all make similar decisions about dining? We'll talk about calendar. If the governor puts pressure on all universities to have a late start, we'll have a conversation about that. If she thinks we can open on time, all of higher ed will talk about those things together. So I think you will absolutely see some places where there's consistency within the state of Rhode Island on how we move as institutions of higher learning, but no disparagement to any one of the schools. Brown is very different than University of Rhode Island, different than Rhode Island School of Design, different than Roger Williams. We're very distinct sizes, locations, and there are things we're going to have to do or be able to do because of our location, because of the size of our student body, where we'll have our own flavor of things, absolutely. And as we do currently pre-pandemic, we're very different institutions from each other.
Thanks, Brian. What happens if Rhode Island opens before other states, say like Maryland and anybody else and those students aren't able to travel outside of their states, but RWU is open?
Well, we're going to be flexible with students' needs. And if we run into that situation, we want to hear from students in advance. Same with our international students. We want to be able to work with students independently. You know, a great example of how we're working with students' needs right now pertain to all of our returning students who have not had the opportunity to move out of their residence hall rooms because they live in Chicago, they live in California, they live in Minnesota, or they live in Florida. We're going to work with those students. They're not going to have the same deadlines. And with the new options that Brian has talked about, there will be ways for students to continue to be engaged in learning and earning credit without physically being here, if that is impossible for them.
Thank you so much. Is there a way for students or for parents to get access to their students' documents, so how their students are doing academically, what things are going on with their students in regards to student accessibility services? So how do parents get access to that kind of information?
There definitely is a process, a FERPA waiver guideline process. That is something we will address in our June orientation sessions. We will have tracks specifically for parents, and we'll get into the details on questions like that.
How would a student get in contact with an advisor so they can take an appropriate class for their major or minor during this summer? So the summer before freshman year begins.
So my advice, and Amy, please correct me or redirect the question. My advice would be they could work directly with the Center for Student Academic Success, which oversees all advising for the university anyways, and that we have personnel there that can help them even before they enroll as a full-time undergraduate and start classes in the fall.
Yeah, I think that at any point over the summer, before you're assigned to an advisory, you have made connections or relationships. You can always use the admission office as your contact point, and we can get you in touch with the appropriate people on campus and make sure that we make that connection for you. So don't hesitate to reach out to us for guidance.
Thanks, Amy. We have a question about a talent scholarship. So if a student received a talent scholarship and changes major, do you still retain the award for all 4 years?
They do. Even if they change their major, even though it's talent specific, it was when they came in. So we let them keep it for all 4 years.
Thank you. Online learning is difficult for all incoming freshmen as they're transitioning from high school to college. With that in mind, how flexible will professors be to online learning? Or how flexible are they as they go through the system or the process or the semester?
So I might need to answer that 2 ways. I don't know if that's a question about concern about how the students in high school might be graded on the courses that they're receiving in high school. So if students are having a challenge in high school, we have received a number of questions about if I don't do well in online learning and my GPA goes down, is that going to affect my admission to the institution? We're very sensitive to how that would work in the admissions process. We were highly sensitive to that for our current Roger Williams students, in the fact that we gave students the option to take courses or their entire semester in a pass-fail, a pass-no-pass option this spring for that fact. No student in high school and no student at Roger Williams signed up for online classes this spring. So we were really mindful in knowing that people learn in those different learning modalities very differently. So if the question is about are our professors or our policies going to take that into effect of the high school online learning? Yes. For coming into the institution, those are the conversations to have and understand the courses in a better way this upcoming fall, to talk to your advisors as you're scheduling classes, to take classes that benefit the way you learn. And I would simply say that happens at orientation every summer for Roger Williams. We have students that love writing or students that may not be able to do a lot of reading, and you may take a discussion-based class more than one that's writing intensive. Students may be hands-on and you take a construction management or a science-based class because you want to be handling things and touching them concretely. Then you'll take different classes. Online is the same way. And I know we learned a lot from that this spring. I mentioned earlier that all of our professors may teach online in different ways. And we've realized that when we're listing classes, even that we're posting for this summer online, we need to do a better job, and we'll do this for the fall, to say, here's a class that's online, but it meets in real time. This class meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 to 11, and you'll listen to a professor online and have discussion online. Other things may say it's a guided self-paced class online. That would look and feel really different. Read the content, watch content on your own, advance at a pace you're comfortable with, take tests and interact with a faculty member as more of a guide. So no two online classes and methods are the same. And I think if a student doesn't do well online, maybe it's the method of online, and our advisors and knowing across over 1,600 classes we offer each semester, our advisors will work with students to make sure that in-person learning, as well as any online learning someone does, meets their learning style. It's really important to us that that's how the Center for Academic Success is designed, and how our advising process will continue to adapt. It's what we've done with all of our in-person classes, and I think we can do it really well for online courses as we go into that type of a scenario planning.
Thanks for that, Brian. So we are going to wrap up. I am aware that there are some questions that are left out there. We are going to follow up with you all individually, as a number of these speak to particular majors, and some I think require some more in-depth responses. So we will connect with you all offline. Before we sign off, I wonder if our panelists have any final thoughts to share. Brian, you're smiling. Do you want to say something?
No, we're doing a lot of these sessions. You know, our faculty are sharing information, and all those videos are online. And just thank you for the time and being engaged, you know, for close to an hour and a half now. Sorry for breaking out my little 5-minute network challenge there, but just thank you for the time. And I hope tonight you can see, like, even if we don't have the answers, I hope we conveyed the approach of what makes Roger Williams a special place for you to be considering. Whatever is presented to us, we are putting students at the front of our thinking. So it's not just about if we open or not, it's about all these questions we answered for you that we want to adapt our systems to meet your needs. It's what we did prior to the pandemic. And it's how we set up advising and tutoring and academic support. And just because we're remote doesn't mean those things change for us. So we hope we've shared that sense that you can trust us to be adaptable and nimble, and we'll look for the same from you as students. And just really thank you for the time, and hope that things are going well and your families are safe and healthy at this time. And you can see sort of the finish line of a high school experience and enjoy the pieces of this final stretch together. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian. Anybody else like to say anything?
Sure, I'll just add, you know, continue to be in touch with us in the admission office and in the financial aid office. And, you know, we're listening to your questions and your concerns and your needs. And, you know, I'm making sure that those get shared at the leadership level, so that as we're making decisions and we're making considerations, you know, we're taking that into consideration. So continue to be in touch with us. Let us work with you and help you through this process. We understand that you know, this spring is very different for all of us, and that's what our staff is here for, to work with you. And I'll just also share that personally, I've never been more proud to be part of the Roger Williams community than I have been recently. Just seeing the way that people have come together, people have stepped up, the creativity, the innovation, it's really, really incredible. And I hope that you see that and that you join us and get to be part of that as well.
And from a student life perspective, our staff's going to be available all summer through orientation, after orientation. And we understand that this is a complex and difficult time. But as a former psychology major, I strongly believe that dissonance promotes growth, and that we'll come out of this better and stronger, both as an institution and also as a state and local and national entity. And I think that this first year class is going to have an extraordinary experience together, and it's going to create a bond that will be unmatched by any other experience.
Thank you.
If I could just add, I know financial information is very sensitive, so please, if you have individual questions, please feel free to contact me directly. My email address is tdacosta@rwu.edu, and I will get back to you, and we can either do it by call or a Zoom, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Thanks, Tracy. I just put your email address in the chat box there for folks.
Thank you.
So thanks to everybody for joining us. As we said, please do continue to communicate with us. We want to be there for you. We want to help you. We want to answer your questions. I will plug the Wiser virtual communities one more time. I know we had a couple of questions folks asking about how they can get connected to that. So that initial invite went out on Thursday, April 16th. at 10:59 a.m. And it's just called our virtual online platform. So folks can go through their emails and search for that. And if you have any issues, just contact us at admit@rwu.edu and we can resend the link to you all. So thanks so much for joining us. As we said, the session has been recorded. We hope to have it online soon. And please be in touch with us if any other questions come up. Bye.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Stay well.